Yeah, I think we're live. Awesome, we're live. And sounds good. All right, you can minimize all those things.
So I'm gonna unplug for a moment just to close my other stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Okay, sure. Yeah. That's fine. We're gonna do some very quick review of the beginning. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we'll share the notes at the end. So I think it might go be a little too fast if you haven't reviewed that beforehand. If you haven't coded either, but yeah, we'll try to make everything intuitive and slow, and so that at least makes sense for the time being. All right. So do we want to get started?
Hello? Yeah, we'll be right back.
You guys have Anaconda installed? Okay. So if not, you're going to search download Anaconda. Yeah, so that's the first one. And then you can just, get the version of your stuff. Yeah, I think you.
Can you pass this around? It's a sign-up sheet. All right, I think we can get started. That's great. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Great to see you here. My name is Cal. I'm the founder of Health Equities. I'm a physician and pharmacist by training and education, and I worked in information technology, primarily in software quality assurance for almost 12 years for corporate America. 5 years ago, I got my green card and wanted to pursue my passion of combining healthcare and technology together. I quit practicing physician because I believe with technology I can impact millions, if not billions of lives, and that's what I intend to do. As part of the health business is I wanted to make an impact in patients' lives, and I also wanted to empower everyone who wanted to make an impact, so that together we can make a greater impact. So with that being said, we started Health Leaders 5 years ago, and we kept on hosting events. We have hosted 300 plus events in the past 5 years. Here in this building. This year we started our incubator program where we're helping people who want to start. We teach them all step-by-step way on. Just if you just have a news idea, we'll start from there and we go all the way to the product and take it to the market. Way. And I'm very excited to talk to you about what we've done last week. We've released a new platform, which is an API platform. We are encouraging software builders to build applications on our platform. And once you build your software, front-end software on the back end, we have all the connections that we have made to each and every electronic medical record system. So you can connect to our back end through an API, and you can see patients' medical records and you can transfer data into patients' medical records. One example of what you can do with that. So this is what we released last week. It's our App Hub platform, and basically it's a REST API. And some of the use cases are that you can connect any of your application to any of these medical records. So it's basically an interoperability hub. So basically right now, all the applications in the App Store are standalone applications. You cannot combine clinical and patient data together. That's what we're trying to solve here. And another example is IoT data into any of these medical records. For example, if someone is testing their blood glucose levels every day and you wanted to show it to the physician on how they're monitoring and managing their diabetes. With this, you can do that. So pretty much what you can do is you can also make your existing old legacy applications, which are service-oriented architecture applications. You can connect APIs to that and make it available to other people. SaaS applications, you can do that as well. So what we're trying to do is solve the connectivity problem in healthcare, because that is the biggest problem right now. And we can get data, push data, we can integrate, aggregate, and do analytics on the data and things like that. Proposition for developers is that you can quickly deploy your application onto our App Hub platform, and you can make it enterprise ready in day one. Think of us just like Amazon AWS or Heroku, but for interoperability. And you can also make existing applications mobile as well. All you got to do is make an API on our platform and open it up. Whatever you can define the governance in the API itself, so you can scale it very fast. Another value proposition for you is that
once you build apps on our platform, then we'll go and sell it to everyone out there. Because one of the way we're working with app developers is that it's just like a typical app platform. It's a revenue sharing model. If you make money, we'll take a little bit percentage of it, or else if you don't make money, it's free for you. And with this, it opens up a lot of new business models we can go after. If you can see patients' data, and you can come up with a lot of business models, and we're here to help you. And if you want to schedule a demo, and if you want to learn more, you just go here and click here. So that is what we've done recently, and we encourage you to participate. That is the reason we are hosting a lot of programming classes. Our intention is to build the developer community and empower the developer community to build software. And we want to give them everything, whatever they need, software, and make it easy for them. And since we've been practicing, I just wanted to throw out a challenge right now for you guys. And right now we're in an opioid epidemic. And what we want to do is, right now, people who are addicts cannot find beds. And there's a huge epidemic and they cannot find beds. So right now, there's no way to find a bed. The only way to find a bed is call each and every detox center to find out if there's a bed. So what we want to do is that we want to use an IoT solution. And if a bed is available, they'll click it. If the bed is not available, we can program it. So this is the challenge for you guys. If you can take this, if you can program this to see if there's a bed availability or not in a Python code, that would be great. And I can also talk to you about the people who have already written that code. We can reuse it and repurpose it. So how to hack a Amazon dash button. And if you type this, there's so many people have written on how to hack a Amazon dash button using Python, and there's Python code already available out there, so we can fork it up from there. And another thing what Amazon is doing is we don't have a dash button right now. Ultimately, we want to buy this dash button. So this is IoT ready dash button. So they give you a lot of infrastructure in the backend. We can plug and play and pretty much take it to the market. So yeah, so that's the challenge for today. And if someone can come up with that script, I would love to talk to you, because we're talking to the state right now to come up with different solutions to help addicts find beds. So please, if you can come up with that as a group or something like that, I would love to talk to you and see if we can help these guys find a bed. So with that being said, I want to thank you so much for coming here, and we will stay in touch, because this is not one-time thing. You had to constantly keep on learning. So we will put you, there's a sign-up sheet. Is that working?
It's not working.
Okay, I'll fix that. I'll pass around the sign-up sheet, and then we'll put on Google Chat. So Google Chat is a Slack competitor, which is just released. It's still in beta version, and that's what we're trying to use. And we'll put you on that, and then you can communicate and help each other out. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope to see you again.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Hanna. We started this Python series 2 weeks ago, basically. So 2 weeks ago, we had our first session. Basically, we talked about how to define variables, lists, write functions in Python. So today, it's going to build off of that. We're going to do a very quick review of lists in Python, and I'll try to make it as intuitive as possible if you haven't coded before, or if you haven't, seen Python at all before. But we're mostly going to be, so after we do the review for the second half, we're going to switch to looking into classes, how to define Python classes and write methods. So I'll go into, what that is basically. So if you haven't installed Anaconda, this is what it's going to look like. If you want to follow along, you can launch Jupyter Notebook from this just by clicking launch. And then it's going to take you, it looks like this. So you'll see, there you'll be able to write lines of code in the boxes that will show you. So when you launch it, it's going to look like this, and you can write your lines of code in here, basically. And then just to go over some basic commands about how you navigate this notebook. So you want to create a new line of code, you do escape B. So if I want to, my code here, and then I want to do a new line, you just do escape B, for example. So that would be your line of code. If you want to write text instead of writing code there, it would just be escape M. Then that would be regular text. So just going over those basic commands. And if you want to run the code, it would just be control return on your laptop. Okay. So we're gonna start by doing a very quick review. Is there a question?
Oh.
Got it? Okay. Cool.
So what we can do is there's a practice session after the class. So if you're stuck somewhere, we can have the whole class. Because people are here for only 1 hour and they have a meeting. So we have to respect their time. Somewhere, and if they ask for a question, but if it takes long, we'll just move on.
All right. So we're just going to dive into doing loops and functions review. We're going to be working with a sample data set. It's just a Titanic data set. If you're familiar with the Kaggle website, you just download it from there. But what it looks like is it describes passengers on the Titanic, their characteristics, and who ultimately survived or not. I don't know if these are actually real people, but I don't think they are. But you have the name of the passenger, what the ID of the passenger is. No, they did not survive, which is a 0. 1, if they did survive, that's a yes. Their sex, their age, how many siblings or spouses they have, the number of parents and children that they have, their ticket number, what was the dollar amount of the fare, their cabin number, and which port they embarked from. So that's what the basic data set will look like. And we're going to write loops and functions in the context of doing some manipulation with this data set. So in terms of just loading the data set, we import the CSV module. You open up the data set, which I called train Titanic.csv, to a list, basically. And if you want to figure out where to get the data set, let me just go to that really quickly. So you go to kaggle.com, and I would just search, it's not quite responding. We just search Titanic. See if it works better on Chrome.
Oh, are you sharing the screen or no?
I'm sharing the screen, just so people can follow along. Yeah. Just click the first one. And then if you go into data, it's going to be the train.csv data file. And I simply name mine train_Titanic. You can name it whatever you want. And then you can just import it into Python. So you want to make sure it's the same directory as where your Jupyter Notebook is here, so that you're not changing directories and all of that. I think you might just want to check which directory your Python notebook is currently stored in, and then just drag your CSV file once you download it into the same directory. So I'll give you guys 1 or 2 minutes if you want to do that. Yeah.
How did you say we can put the same contributor with the same file?
So what I do is I know that for myself, I know that when it's saying it's, my file, which is called untitled3, it's in this directory. So I know it's in this specific directory, and I just drag the train file here. Not sure. Yeah, so that's what I'm used to doing. If you want to just Google directory, how to find out where the directory is on a Jupyter notebook, maybe that will help. But are you guys in a good spot, or do you want one more minute?
At first, if you register, so it takes some time.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll hold on. I'll hold on for a couple more minutes.
So if I download the file, and I always get a HTML file.
It's a what?
I always get an HTML file.
You should be able to download it.
Maybe if I can download, maybe this page, file.
Maybe if you were to click on it.
And it's gonna do, then just take this data, then I got CSV, I got the HTML file, and I changed it into CSV, but then I do something with this. Yeah. Try my drawing.
That's all you need to see.
I just exactly.
I think I want to do maybe like zero cost. So I think that I have to select the directory first. So then once you select the directory, let's do I would just use like, I think it's asking this data file, but if you could go password this one. Yeah. Yeah, and then, wherever this directory was, this directory, this directory. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I can do it. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah. You can, okay, just going to the, yes, maybe just do it. We gotta do that. name Python 2. And then, yeah, so that's where you can code. And then you can drag this to the signal. So you have to go there. And then yeah. Yep. What are the references? Yeah, so I'll just we just make sure that it's not on the system. So it sounds like we're pretty much caught up. Okay, so I'll just keep going here. If you want to load the data set, you can just import a CSV module. So it's like a prepackaged set of code that Python has developed for you to actually import CSV files. So you can just open a file with this line of code, and then we can make these lists, change the data into list form. Use it a little bit. And then what you'll see here is that if you want to look at the first 2 rows of data, for example, whatever you call your data set here, I just called it Titanic. So my data set is stored in the variable Titanic. If I say Titanic, I want to see first 2 rows in here. It's gonna print out something like this. So these are all the headers of the data set right over here. And then this is the first row of data within this data set. Hi, no worries. Oh, I think there's some like extra chairs up here if you want to grab it. So now what the data set looks like, it's gonna look like this. So what's really going on there is, it's actually lists within a list. The last time we said we create a Python list, it's gonna look like this. The brackets that have like a list of items, so it can be numbers, it can be strings, which are just characters, or it can be on a sublist. So what's going on here is saying, the first row within this huge list called Titanic, I have sublist. So the first sublist is the passenger who survived what was their passenger class, whether they were first class or second class or third class, so this first list here just contains a list of the column labels, basically. And then down there, what you see is a bunch of numbers and also some the passenger name, for example, that has like a second list here. It's basically saying this passenger ID is 1, whether they survived, this person did not survive, 0 right here. The guy of what class this passenger was, so this person was in third class, and so on and so forth. Essentially, is that within this entire really big list, Titanic is having sublists. The first sublist is recalling name, the second sublist, the first data row. It's just going to continue like this. The second here is going to be something else. So if I were to ask, what is the second passenger there? We're going to extend it by 1. It's going to say, okay, the second person here, this person has the ID 2. They did survive, so 1 equals yes. And then 1 for the class, so the first class here. This person's name is, and this is John Bradley. So that's how Python is representing this data set right here. Any questions on this part? Okay, cool. So as I mentioned, these are all the variables within this data set of Titanic passengers, who survived, who didn't, which class, which gender, age, and so on and so forth. So just to do a brief review of slicing. So Python is, as I mentioned last time, is 0 indexed. The first item in the list is going to have the index 0. Then it's going to go to 1, 2, 3, 4. So then I'm going to say, I know that my first list is the header. I don't want the header. I just want the data itself. So if I want to do that, I could just say Titanic, 1. Right there. So it's going to say I'm going to start with the second row here, which is this row, and then I'm going to grab everything below that. So that leaves out the header, and it just gives me the body of the data. And then I want to say, okay, now once I get this entire body of the data, what is the first data row here? I just need to take data 0 with index. It's going to show me that first passenger that was originally here. So, quick review of how to write loops in Python. Sometimes we want to do repetitive functions. We don't want to write the same piece of code over and over again. So in that case, you want to basically how that goes is we have a for loop there. So we're going to do this for a moment. So you have a for loop there. It's going to say for everything in Titanic. The Titanic right now, contains rows of data. So it's saying for each list, which represents a row of data in Titanic, if this particular variable, you want to give her the same values in these 2 columns. So this one was the number of siblings, the spouses the passenger had. This one was the number of parents and children the passenger had. So if we want to get rid of missing values, then we're going to do anything. We're going to replace missing values with blank with 0. So this what it's saying is that go through every single row of data in this Titanic data set at the position 6. So the 6th item of the data set, which corresponds to siblings and spouses. And in the 7th row, 7th column data set corresponds to parents and children. If it's blank, we're going to replace it with a 0. Do a data set like that. So I just wanted to make sure, does that make sense to you guys?
So it's a raw, is it, let's say, an index for all the different raws?
What do I look like?
This is defined for a list. If I want to go through list, I can always use this raw command.
Right.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, so what it's doing is we have ID, have survive, almost every variable. The class of the passenger, and then there's unit passenger, goes back up there. So for say we have like this.
Also working for data frames.
It's actually, I'm just going, it's in a list right now, so not,
Yeah.
this is a data frame. Data frame is usually how we deal with data. I just wanted to play here now, kind of iterate over the list.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what it's doing is saying, so in Titanic, there are always rows of data, saying for each row, you just type in your set, so for each one of these rows of data, 1, 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the first row of data here. I'm going to do the position of 6, which I will say is position, index 2 right now. If it's blank, I'm going to replace it by 0. And then I'm going to move to the next one, and this is blank, I'm going to replace it by 0. So it's going to do that for each row. It's going to start here, and then come to this index, see if it's a blank, replace it by 0, and then go to the next one, see if it's blank, replace it by 0. Once I'm done, I come here again, to the second row, do the same thing, have the same indices, conditions. They're going to go through all the rows that way. Does that sort of make sense? Okay. So that's basically what it's doing. This is just basically how you iterate through a list of things within Python. Then you can use if else statements to say, and if this particular condition is true, then this is what it needs to do.
This is just an if else. This is going to
Yeah.
include because iterating, right?
Well, or it's iterating for the data rows here. So just the iterations happen of things just going through each row of data and just doing this check and then doing this replacement. It's going through, so I haven't drawn it here, but let's say this is where our 6 and, if this were our 6 and 7 here, it's basically, starting here. So the row corresponds to this set. And then it's getting to the position 6, so it's looking for this particular position, within that row.
Oh.
So it's like, let's say this where we got 6 column, let's say, okay, start with this row, come to 6, check if this is blank. If so, then make it 0. Then let's look at the next. Is this blank? If not, make it, if not, don't do anything, but if it's blank, then make it 0. And then we're done with that row. We're going to do the same thing here. We'll do this next row of data. Look for this column, and index 6. Is this blank? No, I don't do anything. This is blank, then we're going to replace it with 0. We're just going to do the rows of data like that.
If row position 6 is blank.
Yeah. Yeah, row and index 6, starting with 0.
Can you put 2 conditions in this?
Sorry?
Can you put another condition in this?
Yeah, you can put any amount of conditions you want.
No, like if row 6, nothing is there, right? If I want to replace 1 with 2 and 2 with 3, then is it possible in that?
Yeah, so you say if row 6 is equal to 1, I want to make it 2. Or you can, row 7 is equal to 2, and I want to make it 3. So you're just changing what you put here. And then this symbol is equal. What this means is just going to this thing is this thing, other? If yes, then this is the assignment right here saying assign this position of value 0. So you use the double equal sign if you're comparing two things, but if you're assigning a value to something, like here, right here, then you're going to use just one equal sign. Okay. So next, so here's another type of iteration you can do if you want to do calculations. So let's say, maybe the data, the variable of interest for us is that we don't really care about the spouses and the parents, number of parents, kids as two separate variables. We want to actually see a total number of relatives and family members each passenger has. So then what you can do is, we can iterate through, we take the data and say, some of the spouses, one of the parents and kids, and these two together, and put it into this list here. So just bringing, so I'm going to break that down. Different color markers on that. So we have let's say we have this variable here, and then we have so this is the 6, index 6 here, index 7 here. So then what it says is that for row in range 1, so what a range 1 does is 1, it gives me the length of the check data set. So basically it says, how many things are in this check data set list. It's basically going to count the number of rows in my check data set. So here it's about 200, probably, whatever number of rows in the Excel file is. It's a pretty big data set. Yeah, almost 1,000 rows in here. So it's gonna. So that's what the length part is here, and then what range does is, since the length part is going to be equal to 1,000, let's say, and then what range does is that now this part becomes range. And then what this evaluates to is going to make a list examples from 0 to 1,000. So then, and the reason that I want to do this because then I can say for Titanic data, I start at 0, go all the way to the 1,000th row, and I can move through each row that way. So it's basically saying for each row, from row 0 to row 1,000, we're going to do these things here. And here, what you can see is that I've done, so basically here, saying data for that particular horizontal row, position 6 here. I'm going to store the value of this variable. I'm going to change it to a float because when I import it, it turns the data to a string.
Or variable from Titanic data earlier?
Yeah, I did it earlier. And what I did was, so this is where I did it. I just said, forget the top row here. I'm just going to start with index 1. I just want all the actual rows of data So that's Titanic data. It just doesn't have the header. Oh, so this is what it's doing. It's saying for each row, from row 0 to row 1000, I'm going to get that row's position 6 variable on the siblings. I'm going to make it into a float. So we just put float for the row thing and makes it into a number. The reason this Excel sheet is making it into a string, which is like a a character for the data. So therefore, I want to change that character to a number instead.
Why do we need in this case the in range command, while in the upper example we just took raw? So what's the difference between these two commands?
Yeah, sure. So for this one, it's saying for rowing data, what we're doing there is, so when I say rowing data, if I did this to you and I want to say, show me what each row here in this case looks like. So if I create a new data row for rowing Titanic, so let's make data, and I say, oh, we don't do that. Probably don't want to print every single data set, but let's see what happens. But if you just print row, it's going to print every single line of data for you. So this first person was Mr. Owen Harris. The second person was Mrs. John Bradley. The third person was Miss Lena Hyken. So it's going to show each row.
Then not use this command to extract this information we did in the next step?
So for the next step, what happens is I want to change. I don't want a row to represent each row of data. I actually want the row variable to represent each row number of the data instead. So here, what I do for rowing range len Titanic data, what the row looks like here is I do for row range len Titanic data. And I want to say print row, show me what row looks like here. It's actually going to show me 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to the last row data set. Because the reason I want to do that is because I want to specify the particular row number rather than the row itself. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to say for, within Titanic data for, say, the 11th row, I have this position 6 within the row. I want to get the value of that particular position and assign it to the number of sibling spouses.
Okay.
So yeah, the difference is that is individual rows be returning. This is the returning row itself. And so that's what the range len does. The len says, what is the total size of my data set? Here it's about 1,000. And what range does is when you do range 1,000 right here, it's going to automatically create a list that ranges from 0 to the length of the data set. And then, so what I do, once I get the values of those sibling spouses and parents and kids for each passenger together, so number of siblings plus the number of parents / kids, I'm going to add this sum right here to this new list called total family. So total family members. The total family members is going to list the total family members for each passenger. That's a new list I'm creating there.
Now let's get quiz like a new column.
Well, I haven't put it into.
Where does it go?
It's a standalone thing right now. So I don't want to, put it into the data set itself. If I had to do that, I would have to go through, each row for row data, row append each value in there, add it to the last. As the last item, each row, so add all the way very end here. So then if you say, okay, tell me what the look like, first 10 items look like within this total list, it's going to say the first passenger had one family member, 8 passengers had 4 family members. So that's what that looks like. So next, if we get into functions, so let's say we have to do that list operation for a couple of data sets because we have several data sets that we're looking at. So if you do that, then it's very annoying to keep writing this for loop over and over again. So in that case, to avoid doing that, you want to define a function. So Python functions, how they work is that you give it input, it's going to give you an output. And then you're going to write what it does in the middle. So here's your input, and here's your return is the output that ultimately returns. You always start with that. Whatever the function name is, you're going to specify what the name of the input is. But in here, you tell it what to do. So basically, you move the for loop into the body of this function right here for calculating total family members. And once we're done, making a list of the total family members, we can tell it to return the list back to us. So then the next line after we write this function, we give it the Titanic data set to work off of. We say count family members of this Titanic data set. We give it the Titanic data as the input. It's going to go through these operations here, and then we're going to assign its output to family members for Titanic, so Titanic fan variable. And okay, show me the family members of the first 10 passengers. 0 to 10. It's going to print out this exact same thing that we have up there. So now what we can do is if we have several data sets, we can just do this operation for you. All right, so how are we feeling?
Let's go back up.
Yeah. So I'll just pause a moment for time for everybody to digest. Sure.
I implemented a similar function like you did,
Mm-hmm.
and then there are 549 people, and 343 people.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
I hope these numbers are good.
Shouldn't be very. I would make it.
But you would have to call the function later to do this work, right?
Yeah, so if it's like a different data set that's similar, that would have to say, count and put it in the other data set. That would give the number there and the other data set.
Of course, the forward information has to be different. So they can follow up.
Yeah, so let me, so it's for if I don't get a function that when I run it, the for loop again, I have to specify that data set. Basically, rewrite the for loop function with other data set. So basically, you're writing numbers of data, lines of code every time you want to run a data set. So that's definitely the functions. But yeah, basically creates a package of code that I can just use over and over again. Yeah. So you just need to, for this particular plane, you make sure that those two variables are yeah. Languages and languages from documents and then I get DVD. Yep, that would be the documents. And I took in the data set from the data.com.
Function.
Yeah.
How does function count that? Then the same data set is the same data set.
Data set is going to be looking for whatever data set you need for the function. So basically, you put this against one, you call it you just Google this based on these and then what is happening to the other
How does the referencing files that we have loaded up?
because when you open it, it's the same thing as the things that you see.
Even when you're calling a data set, that's just a placeholder.
Yeah, when the data set is running the variable.
So I can just delete it.
Well, if you delete it, then the thing is like finding screen on that, there's something that looks good, but the thing says this something that looks good input. And then it has no and that's basically the input that you're eventually putting there. And then automatically some these data set variables. Now then it's just a little
So because we have previously defined the load into the open, this gets me.
right.
It doesn't matter what we call this here,
Yeah.
bring on what we loaded in.
Yeah.
That's the data set. Okay.
I think again, I still remember the syntax for it. So if you want to just do a CSV module of Python, it'll probably tell you what all the things you Yeah. Yeah. I think there is a way to just, usually we don't work, so here usually we don't work with data sets like this, but, not unless it is. Because, yeah. So, yeah, so that is the mistake. Tab around numbers, and then others, with Python, usually we return or we're automatically included for whatever the formulas and the functions. Use the search function. And then just and then more to that. And then yeah, so I just understood except and then I don't know how to work for that. I really
It should be in home file.
Just opening the file.
Okay. So classes. So basically, functions are a way for us to write code, and be able to reuse that code repetitively. So classes are like you have a better way of doing that. Basically, it's a way for you to write, I guess, a whole set of functions, and then be able to run those functions repeatedly. And the reason you want to do this is so that you can make your code organized. You're not having, functions, throughout your entire piece of code and forgetting when you call certain functions. You can just put it in a class or a category of related functions, and then you call those functions repeatedly. And so that just basically is a way of writing very organized code. And then you also use that code as well. And the thing is, so I think one analogy that I hope in terms of understanding classes is that Python is an object-oriented programming language, so you can create objects. That might sound really weird to you if you have never coded before. So when you're making classes and then defining functions, the way you can think about it is like, a car factory. The object you're making is a car. So you can define what color the car is, what make it is, what model it is. And then you also want to building functionalities for it, like it needs to be able to turn left, turn right, go faster, go slower, and stop. So basically, when you're defining these classes, you're doing that similar thing. You initialize the object or class basically by saying class. We're going to call it a dataset class. We're going to create a dataset object, which corresponds to our car that we're creating. And then we're going to specify functions, which are going to be called methods in this case within that class. So here we're just saying we're going to define a class called dataset with the def unit on a self line here. So that initializes the object. And we're going to say, okay, whatever this object is, it's going to always be a CSV. So then, as the object, we're going to call it type is going to equal to this dataset class. So just put parentheses here. In this case, if you ask it, okay, this Titanic variable that I just created, what kind of object is it? And you say print Titanic.type, it's going to say, oh, it's a CSV object. So, and what it's doing is it's saying, okay, I created a dataset class called Titanic, and then I can reference the type here by simply typing Titanic.type. It's going to call this part right here, CSV PU here. And what's missing from our dataset class right now is that we don't have a way of writing the dataset in there. So we're going to say when you initialize it, put the class to actually taking the data set variable and actually passing a data set to this and assign it to this object. We add the data variable here, and we say, self, which refers to the object itself. So the data for the self object, the self object data is going to equal to whatever the person passes name. So what happens here is that if I create a new object, this is called Titanic object, it's equal to data set, Titanic. Actually, I want to make it Titanic. Yep. Titanic. It's going to assign this Titanic data set to this class, basically. So here, we create this Titanic, this data set object for the Titanic data. We ask, what are the first 3 rows in the data? What do they look like? That is going to say, here are the first 3 rows. So the first row right here is the headers of the data. The second row, which starts after the comma, this entire list here, the second row. If I actually wanted to have 3 rows, I would this is the first passenger, this is the second passenger here. So that's what that looks like. And so basically you think of this part as like you're making this car, you're saying, okay, the color is red, it has 4 wheels, so these are just describing characteristics of this object. So in this case, we're saying this type is always going to be a CSV type, where the data is passed through. And we can also make this object the header / the body. So the header, let's say self.header is always going to be equal to this first row here with all the headers. And then the body of the data set is always going to be equal to this data, starting with index 1 all the way to the end of the data set. So only contain the rows of data itself. And then after that, we can define methods, which are you can really just think of as functions, methods that are relevant for this data set object. So here, just the same way you define functions, you say, previously we had a function for, or some lines of code for actually moving the same data set, data points. So here you can say, I want to write a generic function or method for removing the same values. So you always want to say passing the self variable, because that's saying, okay, we want to do it to this particular data object and then not any other data object. So you always want to pass a self. Then you can variable. So what is the input that this method would take? So here we have a method, the input called index. Basically, when someone calls this method, they can specify the indices of the columns for which they want to remove the missing values. So here you can say, when I specify for that I want to look for missing values in, and for I column index 4. So for each of these columns that I specified, go through the rows, for each row, in range of self.body. So self.body was just the body of the data set, basically this thing here. So for each row, the length of the data set, 0 to 1,000. So for each row, we row 1 to 1,000 in case for the data set. If that particular row for data in that particular 6 position of them will be equal to blank, they would replace it with a 0. That's one method for removing the missing values. And then you can also define the method for adding different columns together. So this is very generic for adding things. So previously we said we'll add siblings and parents and children together. You can say, okay, I define a method called add columns. So parameter here again, and then we're gonna put in the input variable columns here. So we're gonna say, allows people to say whatever calls I would add together, I can just put a list of those column indices here. So then what it's going to do is, we're going to create an empty list here, just to, so this list is with the sums I'm going to show you calculate. We're going to say for row in the body of the data, we're going to start the sum variable with 0. It's going to go through the columns and add together all the values we want to add together, and append that final sum to the sum columns list. So it's going to return this final element here. It's not really confusing, but
How can you link this method with an object?
so it's through the self. The reason it knows what self.body is because you define this entire class here. And then you said, for this class, there's self, whatever. And that's why you can include the self, otherwise it doesn't know what you're talking about. And here, the reason it knows is that it's self.body. It knows what this thing here is because you specify self. So now it knows, okay, there's a thing called self.body and data here. That's what I iterate for it. And so that's how you tie these methods back to the object itself. So then if I want to use methods, if I create a variable, I can call it Titanic data set as an object. I pass in the Titanic data. And I ask it what type it is. It's a CSV type. Then I say, okay, tell me what the header of this Titanic data set looks like. It'll say here are all the header variables. Tell me what the first 3 rows of the data look like. So you just do Titanic data set dot body. And it's going to show you the first 3 rows of the data. So you can see one person ending here, but starting up top, and the second person starting here. Ending on the bottom, and then this third person is Lena Hyken over here. And then you can remove missing values. So previously you want to remove missing values from rows. If you need to go, feel free to go. But yeah, if you want to remove the missing values, from columns from index 6 and 7, you just say, like, here are the specific columns from which I need to remove missing values from. So you're just passing those columns and remove the missing values from those columns within the Titanic data set. And as you remember, the reason we can do this is because the method up here to say to passing this input column index, which is a list of indices of the column that you want to work with. So now it's saying, for columns 6 and 7, with the data set, go through each row, remove the missing values from the 6th and 7th position of each row of data. And then you can also use the sum columns method. So previously we want to add parents, the parents variable and the parents/children variable and the siblings columns together. So here we say we want to add the columns 6 and 7 together. So I just do the columns 6 and 7. And it basically uses the method up here to do that calculation. So here you can pass in which columns you want to add together. It does this calculation and returns a list of the summed values for each passenger. So then when you ask it, okay, tell me what the first 10 values are for this list. It'll print out this list. So for the first passenger, this first passenger only had one family member. For the 8th passenger, this passenger had 4 family members. So that's what it returns to you here. And it's basically essentially what you did with writing the function previously, but making it more generalized. You want to see the methods?
Define the body.
Sorry?
When did you define the body?
I defined body up there. So I said sub.body is data from the first index all the way to the end of the data set. So I define it all within this, self, saying this car data set that we're making, it has the attributes, header and body. And then because I pass in the self parameter here, it's saying it knows that these methods will work on the self, which we will associate with the data set. So if you remove self, this is not going to work. And then this might feel a little opaque because we're not here. Let's say I'm starting a list of sum calls here. I'm going to iterate for each row of the data within the body of the data set. I have a sum variable called 0. And then for each index, the column index, I'm going to add that particular number to sum. So sum, let's say, is equal to 0 plus these plus or equal. This is the same as saying sums equal to sums plus the vector column we add. Start with 0. I pass in columns 6 and 7 for the data set. So 0 plus column 6, the parent/kids value. Then I go to column, iterate to 7. So sum is going to be equal to parents and kids. Because the next column, I'm still add the siblings and spouses to parents and kids. So now it's going to be parents/children plus plus siblings and spouses, and that's going to be the final sums value. Then I'm going to add that final sums value to the sum calls list. Return that entire list of sums at the very, very end.
So where do I get calls?
This calls, I just the input variable. I say you want to specify which columns you want to add together by the indices. So,
Okay, so you have to define it when you are using the function.
So this is the name of the input. So calls is just like a variable, a standard, or whatever input you're feeding to this method.
Okay, so you usually define this number of calls.
So when I call it, I call type in dot add calls. I'm gonna say these 6 and 7 right here. Oops, sorry.
Okay, cool.
And maybe, sorry, I'm gonna. This one, sorry. This one, yeah, sorry. Yeah, just give this color some, at least some.
Okay.
So you do type in the add calls here for the type in data, I specifically mentioned 6 and 7.
Okay.
Let's say for each row of the data, I'm going to start with sums. The sum is my keeps track of the summation. I'm going to start at 0. I'm going to do for everything calls. So I is going to equal 6. Row is going to say. So the first thing the sum is going to equal to sums plus row condition 6. So saying add what is it? Siblings and spouses to sum. So that's simply 0 plus whatever the number of siblings spouses per household is. And now sum is going to be equal to 1. So at the very end here. At the very end here, sum is going to be equal to 1.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's equal to 1. So then it says, okay, go to the next column in this list. So column 7. And now it's going to be like sums is, as you can see. And now it's going to be sums is equal to 1 plus whatever is here in our row. And return those answers to now sums is equal to 3. And then we all have 2 columns, and now we're done. We're making the columns, and it's going to add sums to this list of summations here.
Okay, cool.
And then it's going to return that. That's how you see the output down, down here. So basically, this method is like a generic, it's a generalizing what we were doing earlier over here. So here we very specifically say column 6 and 7. So when someone calls this function, they can only add columns 6 and 7. But here we generalized it. We said, it doesn't have to be column 6 and 7. You can actually tell us whatever columns you want to add together, as long as they're numbers. And then we'll just iterate through these columns, go through each rows, and add them together. Okay. So the final point I wanted to touch upon is just inheritance. So classes are like a way of writing a package of functions that are related to each other, that do something that's relevant to a certain focus. Inheritance is when you want to define a class that has use the same functions as another class, but maybe there's some modifications to it. So for example, we want to write some methods that are very specific for type data set. It's not going to be relevant for any other data sets that we're working on currently at the moment. So this method, split passenger, and what it's going to do is we want to create subsets of data. One data set for the people who are in first class, one data set for the people who are in the second class, and the final data set for people who are in the third class. And we want to maybe do some analysis within each of these 3 subsets of data. So this is what the function essentially does. So this is very specific for the type data set. We know the data set that we're working on has this class variable. So we don't want to put this as the generic data set object that we just previously defined. So then what we're thinking of is that we want to write a class that just has this function, this method specifically for this Titanic data set. So do that. And you still want to keep the methods from a generic dataset object, then without inheritance, you have to rewrite everything. So you're going to create a class that's different from the dataset object that we're going to call the Titanic dataset object. As does everything that the generic dataset class can do. So have those methods for removing missing values and adding columns. And then finally, we're just going to add this method down here. So basically, you rewrite everything. So that's annoying if you want to write classes that are similar to each other, but yeah, you have to keep rewriting everything. So then what you can do in Python instead is that you can have one class inherit the attributes and methods from another class. And the way you would do that is we define a Titanic dataset class called Titanic dataset class. So having nothing there. So previously when you define class is just colon afterwards. So now you're actually going to passing the class that you want to inherit from. So we told this that it's going to inherit from the dataset object class. So then when you do the initializer, it's going to say def init, self data, and instead of you writing self.data is equal to data, self.body is equal to body, you can just say, okay, we're going to inherit the initializer from the dataset object previously. So now it's automatically going to know that self.body is equal to the second row here all the way down, self.header is equal to this first row here. So then the initialize, so inherits all the attributes and methods from the previous class. There's something, just write the new method that you want down here. And then when you initialize the Titanic dataset class, we're going to call it Titanic data 3, this object. When we write, so if you want to know header, you can just do Titanic data 3.header. And it knows that this is going to be a header because it's inherited from the dataset object. And then, you can also figure out what the first 3 rows of the body look like. It's going to print out the first 3 data rows for the first 3 passengers. You can still use the sum columns method from the dataset object class. That, and you print out the first 10 sums. It'll tell you the sums of the parents / children plus the siblings right down here. So it's the same exact output that you were seeing previously. And then finally you can say, split the passenger, call the split passenger method that you define specifically for the Titanic data set. And then you ask it, when we did a split passenger, we created a dictionary and said, first class is going to be equal to the list of data rows for people who are in the first class. Second class is going to be equal to the data rows for the people who are in second class, and so on and so forth. And so splits the data up by passenger class. Then we ask, how many people are in first class? So you just say, so to do that, I just ask, how many rows of data do we have in that first class subset? It's going to tell you we have 216 rows of data. So that's 216 people in first class. That's basically how inheritance works within Python. And that is the last topic we're going to cover today. I think, it's a chunky piece for everybody.
Scroll up a bit.
Is there any way that you can share this data?
Yeah, so we'll post this on the Meetup page itself. Yeah, so I just wrote this last night, which is why I didn't have a chance to share it beforehand, but that's what the code looks like.
In reference to data set, go down.
So you guys want to look at the split?
Oh, yeah. Also
Oh.
a little bit of edges from last time.
Oh, I think it's the, yeah, so this is where the inheritance is happening.
Yeah, so that data set is a reference to the class. reference to an object.
you mean right here?
Yeah.
So it's basically taking the data set class, and it's saying for Titanic data set class, it's going to inherit all the attributes of the data set class up here. So it's going to be able to do all this stuff up here. And that's why you're able to, when you initialize the Titan data set class, you can still print, Titanic.dataset.header, and it knows what to do with that header. So so basically it's saying when we initialize Titan dataset class, it's going to take everything that was in the dataset class we defined earlier, and bring it down here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then, what is your space between these two? Is it in documents? I think they're in documents. Yeah. So where's your, it used to be in the same document. I think you put that in your documents. And then it's like, you look at the documents. So go here, so where's this? I think you put it down. As a new documents, then you CSV document for this documents folder. Because your code and you're going to do some
Okay, so you can use which is
then where's your document? Then open up the open a new window. So how two windows open? Yeah, so this is just pulling from the folder from here. And so you can open a different window. That's all you open two windows at the same time. Yeah. Can you drag? Can you drag into the documents? Oh, basically. Is there a notebook over there? So this that's new here untitled. So that trace is used to be here as well.
in this one.
Yeah, this one is because these are general documents. So you get this. Yeah, so now it's there. And then you can coding. And then you can do the CSV. Yeah, let's start typing. With this busy. You just do control enter. Then runs the coverage for you. Then you can do so then you can do something like I gotta leave pretty soon. Do you guys have any questions? Okay, cool. So we'll just post this online afterwards.
Thank you so much, Hanna. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause to
Yeah, thank you for
any questions you have. Right now, and then I'll try to all to hang out chat. It's still in a beta version. I requested that Google also get into us. Just go on Google slide and switch it back to the chat and things like that. Here is some of the material on how you can use our app hub to build your apps. And read more about that. And then I want to talk to you about does everyone have a copy? And if anyone is interested in looking for a job, if anyone asks me, we have an opening. And my email is here. So if you're interested, please send me your resume. My email is koyana@helpingham.org. Okay, I'll send you an email. But if you don't hear from me, just shoot it to me anyway. But you should hear from me again. I'll circle up with you, summarizing what we did today and so on. And the next thing we'll be looking for is we're looking for instructors to teach different classes. We're looking for web development instructors, iOS and Android app instructors. So if you or your friends know how to teach this, please, you're welcome to work with us, and we'll host a class for you, and we'll do all the marketing and bring all the people for you. And now we're going to have a practice session. Whatever you have learned, you can implement it, or you can work on your own projects, or you can help us out work on that IoT project to find the best finder for your addiction. And the practice session will be in Kathmandu conference room over there. Okay? And yeah, I think that's all I had. Does anyone have any questions so far?
The question is, you got anything here, same thing for 10 days?